Hello, everybody, and welcome into a new episode of Billikens Beat here at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I'm Ben Frederickson alongside Stu Durando. Stu, we were hoping to be discussing the Billikens' return to play this week. Instead, we'll probably have another video about when the Billikens might be back. The Billikens are supposed to play Wednesday. We're not optimistic that game is going to get played. They could play Saturday. We'll see. They're trickling out of their now lengthy COVID quarantine. But they're not back to practicing quite yet, and not everybody's cleared to come out of their quarantine. Where do things stand right now, and why, Stu, is this taking so long?
Well, I guess the exciting news for fans is that players are starting to emerge from hibernation and getting back in the gym and doing some workouts one by one as they're cleared to come out. The 14-day quarantine, first 14 days ended on Tuesday, so there were some guys in the gym Wednesday, but the sheer number of cases and just the different timelines everybody's on is what's pushing this thing back. If you were positive, you had another 7 days tacked on from the end of when you last had symptoms. So that's pushing some guys to the middle of next week approximately. They're not exactly sure on a date, but the first full team practice, Travis Ford has said, will not be until midweek to late week next week, which almost surely means that they won't play that game at UMass on Wednesday night.
This is kind of, I know fans are frustrated, and I didn't mean to sound short-sighted here. The most important thing, of course, is that everybody is healthy and there are no symptoms upon this return, and there's nothing that SLU's going through that a lot of teams in college basketball are not going through. But the reason that maybe this holdup has been longer than some teams has to do with the number of players who have contracted the virus, the number of coaches, and also too, it's not a SLU or A-10 rule. Their rules for quarantine and coming out of quarantine are also they start with the city's rules, Stu. These are not something that SLU or the A-10 is making up. They have to go by what the city says is right for everybody.
Right. There's different protocols in different places, and the Atlantic 10 has its own protocols, which they changed a couple of weeks ago, but SLU still has to abide by the city of St. Louis, which really isn't that different from most places. But with the additional 7 days, that pushes things back a little bit longer than people were expecting. And as you were saying, the main thing is the health. And SLU has said that nobody experienced anything more than minor symptoms. So that's the good thing. Everybody nobody got severely ill or anything along those lines, and they're on the road to recovery.
The other good news, and you had a great story catching up with the A-10 conference commissioner, is A-10 still feels pretty good about SLU's chances to make the NCAA tournament as long as they get back here and obviously hit that lowest number of games, that threshold of 13 to qualify for the tournament. They shouldn't have any problem getting to that. I don't think they're going to be able to make up all of these games that they've missed, but it seems like SLU is still in pretty good footing for NCAA tournament consideration despite this layoff. And in fact, they've actually kind of improved their spots in some of the rankings and the polls that really go into factoring which teams make the tournament since they've been shut down, which is kind of ironic, but a silver lining for the Billikens perhaps.
Yeah, they're holding their own on all those analytics at 16 in the net this morning, which is still awfully good for a team that hasn't played in 3 weeks. So, yeah, Bernadette McGlade, the commissioner of the A-10, she's also a member of the Division I basketball committee that makes the selections for the NCAA tournament. And her view was at this point, SLU's in fine shape. They're not going through anything much more than what a lot of other teams that will be considered for the field have gone through. And she said that, with the 8 non-conference games, obviously was a boost because they got 8 games in before they went down. And now they still have an opportunity to play maybe 13 to 15 conference games. Let's say she conceded that there's no way they could play all of their games, and you wouldn't try and make them do that in such a short period of time. But as long as they say they get to 14 and they get to 22 games overall, she, termed that as being very strong, actually, in the grand scheme, considering that you only need 13 to qualify for consideration. And with some of the wins they still have that look good and what they might do in conference, they can still have a really good resume, and the number of games won't impact them at all.
At some point, hopefully soon, these guys are going to be back on the court together. They probably won't have too many chances to practice before they're playing conference games. It's still crazy to think they have not yet played one conference game yet. What do you think is going to be the most important thing basketball-wise in order for them to try to come back and play competitively against conference opponents after what will be a month or more off? I mean, other than, being free and clear from the virus and any lingering symptoms, which we know, based off what we see in other sports, that's not always a given. So we don't assume anything, but basketball wise, what's going to be the most important thing for these guys to try to pick up where they left off?
Yeah, conditioning will obviously be a factor. I mean, I've talked to Travis before about players who've missed 2 or 3 days of practice, and they'll say they came back and they were out of shape. So I can't imagine what it might be like if they're out of practice for 3 weeks and trying to get back into condition to play at a high Division I level. So that's going to be a big thing. And I would imagine that shooting and getting back in and getting the shooting touch back a little bit is going to be key. I mean, they know, they've been drilled on the offense and the defense and all that stuff. That's going to still be in their head, but conditioning and reaction time and I would imagine shooting touch are going to be things to watch.
Hopefully those who were able to do some things in their quarantine did, because if not, that could show pretty quick. It'll be interesting to see what a team looks like with a month-long break in the middle of its season here. But hopefully SLU gets to find out, because that means they're back to playing. Stu, keep up the great work. Billikens fans can follow along at stltoday.com. My plan, hopefully, fingers crossed for next week, is that we're breaking down some opponents as opposed to breaking down the COVID situation. But we'll roll punches here on Billikens Beat. You've done a great job covering it, Stu. Keep that up, and we'll talk to everybody next week. For Stu Durando, I'm Ben Frederickson. Have a good week, everybody.